Alone in the house. I was 16 when I found myself home alone for the first time. My parents had planned a weekend getaway, and I was excited to have the house to myself. At first, the prospect felt liberating. I could stay up late, watch movies, and snack without anyone judging me. But as night fell and the shadows crept into the corners of the house, my excitement began to wane. That Friday evening, I settled into the living room with a bowl of popcorn, the flickering light of the TV casting a warm glow. I chose a horror movie. Something about it felt fitting for the night. The sound of rain pattering against the windows created a cozy atmosphere, and for a while, I forgot that I was alone. As the movie progressed, I felt a slight unease creep in, but I pushed it aside. After all, nothing had ever happened in our quiet neighborhood. But as the clock struck midnight, I heard a noise, a faint creaking sound coming from upstairs. My heart raced. It was probably just the house settling, I told myself, but my imagination began to run wild. I paused the movie, straining to listen. The creaking came again, this time louder. I glanced at my phone. No missed calls or messages. It was just me, the popcorn, and that eerie sound. I decided to investigate, gathering what little courage I had and grabbing a flashlight. Slowly, I climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The hallway felt darker than usual, the shadows pooling in the corners. I approached my parents' bedroom, where the noise seemed to be coming from. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, shining my flashlight around the room. Nothing. The room was empty, untouched. I felt a rush of relief but decided to check the rest of the house, just to be sure. As I moved from room to room, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I checked the bathroom, the guest room, and finally the attic door. That's when I heard it again, a low whisper, almost a sigh. It sent chills down my spine. I turned off my flashlight and held my breath, straining to hear. The sound seemed to come from the attic. I hesitated, a million thoughts racing through my mind. Was it just my imagination? Should I call my parents? But curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed the flashlight again and slowly opened the attic door. The stairs creaked under my weight as I ascended, and I felt the temperature drop. The air was thick with dust and something else, something stale and old. As I reached the top, I swung the flashlight around, illuminating the cluttered space filled with boxes and old furniture. I scanned the room, my heart pounding in my chest, and that's when I saw it. A dark shape crouched in the corner, partially hidden by an old sheet. I froze, the light shaking in my hand. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling. There was no response, just the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I took a step closer, the flashlight beam revealing more details. It was just a mannequin, but my heart raced as I felt a rush of adrenaline. I cursed myself for being so jumpy. I turned to leave, but as I did, I heard that whisper again, clearer this time. "Help me." I whipped around, my breath hitching in my throat. The voice seemed to echo off the walls. There was no one else in the attic. I bolted back down the stairs, adrenaline surging. I grabbed my phone, dialing my parents' number, but the call went straight to voicemail. Frantically, I locked all the doors and turned off the lights, plunging the house into darkness. I could barely hear the movie playing in the background. I huddled in a corner of the living room, clutching my phone tightly, the glow of the screen the only source of light. Minutes felt like hours. I kept replaying that whisper in my mind, wondering if I was losing it. My heart raced as I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps upstairs, slow, deliberate. I strained to listen, but my breath felt like a boulder in my throat. Then, the footsteps stopped. I jumped when my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "We're on our way home. Be there in about an hour. Everything okay?" I typed back, "No. Can you come home now?" My hand shook as I sent the message. I heard my parents' car pull into the driveway just as the footsteps resumed. Panic surged through me. I needed to get to them. I opened the front door, ready to bolt outside, but before I could move, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the hallway. The footsteps echoed down the stairs, growing closer. I felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a stranger with a wild look in their eyes, standing just outside the living room. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled backward, my heart racing as the figure approached, a smirk on their face. Just then, the front door swung open, and my parents rushed in, confusion written all over their faces. "What's going on?" My mom shouted. The stranger turned and fled out the back door, disappearing into the night. My parents and I stood in shock, trying to comprehend what had just happened. I recounted everything: the noises, the whisper, the figure in the attic. They quickly called the police, but by the time they arrived, the stranger was long gone. The officers assured us they would patrol the area, but the sense of safety I had once felt in our home was shattered. My parents decided to stay with me that night, and I was grateful for their presence. As I lay in bed later, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next chance to strike. I'd learned a hard lesson that night. Sometimes, being home alone isn't all it's cracked up to be, and some whispers are better left unheard. The night I met the shadow. It was a typical night, or at least it started that way. I had been feeling exhausted after a long week at work, so I decided to turn in early. As I nestled into my bed, the weight of sleep enveloped me quickly, and soon I drifted into a deep slumber. Little did I know that I was about to experience something that would haunt me for years to come. I woke up suddenly, or at least I thought I did. The room was dark, and a heavy sense of dread washed over me. I tried to move, to get out of bed, but my body felt like it was made of stone. Panic began to claw at my throat as I realized I was completely immobilized. I could see the clock on my nightstand, 2:13 a.m. In that terrifying moment, I was acutely aware of my surroundings. The shadows in my room seemed to shift and sway, but the worst part was the sensation that I wasn't alone. My heart raced, and I tried to call out, to scream for help, but no sound escaped my lips. It felt as if something was pressing down on my chest, constricting my ability to breathe. Then I saw it. At the foot of my bed, a dark figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and indistinct, shrouded in a heavy darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. I couldn't make out any features, but I could feel its presence. It was as if it was staring right through me, penetrating my very soul. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I desperately tried to move my arms or legs, anything to escape. The figure took a step closer, and I felt an overwhelming wave of terror wash over me. It was as if I could sense its intentions, and they were anything but benign. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to wake up, to escape this nightmare. I thought of every method I could use to break free. Deep breaths, focusing on my fingers, but nothing worked. The weight on my chest felt heavier, and I could hear a faint whisper, unintelligible yet ominous. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as I lay there, trapped between sleep and wakefulness. The figure drew closer, its presence overwhelming. I could feel a chill radiating from it, an energy that made every hair on my body stand on end. I knew I had to break free. Finally, in a moment of sheer desperation, I mustered all my strength and managed to let out a small whimper. To my surprise, it seemed to break the spell. My body jolted awake, and I shot upright in bed, gasping for air. The figure was gone. The room was just as it had been before, and the clock now read 2:15 a.m. I lay there in the silence, heart pounding, sweat dripping down my forehead. The sensation of dread lingered, but I was relieved to be free. I fumbled for my phone, illuminating the dark room, needing to confirm that I was truly awake. After several moments, I managed to calm my breathing. I told myself it was just a vivid nightmare, perhaps a byproduct of stress or exhaustion. I attempted to go back to sleep, but each time I closed my eyes, I could still feel the presence of that shadow lingering in the corners of my mind. Over the next few weeks, I encountered episodes of sleep paralysis more frequently. Each time, the scenario was eerily similar: a dark figure looming at the foot of my bed, that same suffocating weight on my chest. Sometimes the whispers returned, indistinct yet menacing, filling the air with an unshakable dread. I tried every method I could find to combat it, adjusting my sleep schedule, practicing relaxation techniques, and even consulting articles about sleep paralysis. Despite my efforts, the experiences persisted, each one more frightening than the last. I often found myself afraid to fall asleep, wary of what might await me in the darkness. Friends and family tried to reassure me, telling me that it was just a sleep disorder, nothing more. But for me, it felt like a malevolent force had taken an interest in me. One particularly terrifying night, I decided to try something different. I stayed up late, engrossed in a book, hoping fatigue would keep the paralysis at bay. I finally fell asleep around dawn, but the relief was short-lived. I woke up once again, trapped, unable to move. This time, however, the figure was even closer, almost hovering over me, a cold breath on my cheek. But something shifted in me. Instead of succumbing to fear, I concentrated all my energy on breaking free. I focused on the tip of my finger, willing it to move. I felt the heaviness, the dread, but I didn't let it control me. Slowly, my finger twitched. I kept pushing, and with every ounce of willpower I had, I felt my body respond. I jolted upright again, but this time, I felt a rush of empowerment. That moment marked a turning point for me. I learned that while sleep paralysis could be frightening, I had the ability to confront it. Over time, the episodes became less frequent, and I found ways to manage my anxiety around sleep. I would talk myself through it, remind myself that I was safe, that I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The experience taught me about the fragile boundary between wakefulness and sleep, and the depths of my own resilience. Though the shadows still occasionally lingered at the edges of my dreams, I knew I had the strength to face them, turning my fear into a source of strength. Lost in the forest. It was a bright Saturday morning when my friends and I decided to explore the nearby forest, an expansive stretch of towering trees and winding trails that we had often heard about but never ventured into. The sun filtered through the leaves, creating dappled patterns on the forest floor, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and earth. Excitement buzzed among us as we set off, armed with snacks, water, and a sense of adventure. As we entered the woods, the sounds of the outside world faded away. Birds chirped above, and the rustling of small animals scurrying through the underbrush surrounded us. We wandered deeper, our laughter echoing through the trees as we followed a narrow path that seemed to beckon us forward. After an hour of walking, we came across a clearing where the sunlight bathed the area in warmth. It was the perfect spot for a break. We spread out our snacks and sat on the soft grass, enjoying the moment. As we relaxed, I couldn't help but notice how peaceful it felt, like we were miles away from civilization. Once we had eaten, we decided to explore a bit more. Our group split up, with each of us taking a different direction, promising to meet back at the clearing in half an hour. I ventured deeper into the woods, feeling a sense of wonder as I admired the towering trees and vibrant greenery. As I walked, I became aware of an unusual stillness that settled around me. The birds had stopped singing, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my feet. I shook it off, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But as I continued, an unsettling feeling crept in. The trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches casting eerie shadows. I glanced at my phone, hoping to check the time, but found that I had no service. I started to feel uneasy. Where was everyone? I turned around, intending to head back to the clearing, but the path I had taken felt unfamiliar. The trees looked different, the landscape shifting in subtle ways that sent a shiver down my spine. I quickened my pace, but every turn I took seemed to lead me deeper into the forest. I tried calling out for my friends, but my voice felt swallowed by the thick air. Panic began to set in. I realized I was lost. As I pushed through the underbrush, I could hear faint whispers, like the rustling of leaves carried by the wind. I stopped, straining to listen, but the sounds faded away, leaving only silence in their wake. I felt a chill creeping up my spine. Was it just my imagination, or was something watching me? Desperate, I pressed on, hoping to find the clearing again. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, and the shadows stretched long and ominous. I felt a rush of fear as I realized that I had lost track of time. I called out again, my voice trembling, but no one responded. Suddenly, I stumbled into a small grove where the trees were unusually twisted and gnarled, their branches forming shapes that looked almost human. I felt a sense of dread wash over me, as if I had crossed into a different realm. The whispers returned, clearer this time, echoing around me. I turned to leave, but found that the path I had come from seemed to have vanished, replaced by dense thickets. Panic surged through me. I pushed through the foliage, my heart racing. I could feel the forest closing in, suffocating me with its darkness. After what felt like hours of wandering, I finally came across a narrow trail. I followed it desperately, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear the distant sounds of laughter and movement. My heart lifted. My friends were nearby. I burst through the trees and into the clearing, breathless and wide-eyed. My friends looked up, surprised at my sudden appearance. They quickly gathered around, their faces a mix of concern and relief. "Where were you?" "We were starting to worry," one of them exclaimed. I recounted my harrowing experience, still trembling. They listened intently, but when I mentioned the whispers and the strange grove, they exchanged glances. It turned out that they had noticed an odd change in the atmosphere too, a weight that hung in the air as they waited for me. We decided it was time to head back, and together we made our way out of the forest, the path now feeling more familiar. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that the trees were watching us, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. When we finally emerged from the woods, the sun had nearly set, casting an orange glow on the horizon. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but deep down, I knew that the forest held secrets that would linger in my mind long after we left. That day, I learned that nature can be both beautiful and terrifying. And sometimes, the unknown is better left unexplored. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.